Now I have to click an orange arrow. This one? People can see this orange.
Yeah.
And now it's happening. Are we live? Do you think we're live?
Press the orange arrow on.
Oh, this one.
Oh, that one.
We are live.
All right.
There's no business like show business. Like, it's very... Hello.
Hello.
I'm Alan Schlechter.
I'm Dan Lerner.
We are very excited to present How to Thrive in College. When you do webinars and it starts off, it's very anticlimactic. You press a button, and then you have no sense who you're talking to, and we're staring into a little monitor.
Yeah, but we know you're all out there, and we're thrilled to have you, so thank you for joining us today. Yeah.
So,
how should we begin?
Shall we?
Yes, by all means. So, yes, as he said, Alan Schlechter, Dr. Alan Schlechter, I'm Dan Lerner, and together we teach the science of happiness at New York University. It has become the largest elective course at the school, where we focus really on challenges and opportunities to well-being for the college population. But we want to introduce it to you in a very distinctive way. And it's basically how we introduce it to our students every semester. We want you to think, and we know there are both parents out there and current college students out there, and everything in between, or everything in your universe. But we want you to think about this. We want you to take a moment, and we would like for you to think about the very moment that you received your acceptance letter to whatever college, university you attended. Now, for the students out there, you probably clicked to open. For the parents out there, you probably rushed home and rifled through the mailbox or the mail to find an actual physical letter. But think about that for a moment. When you opened the letter, when you clicked on that button, and when you saw the word congratulations. Now, we ask this question or bring this scenario to our students every semester, and we get an amazing array of answers. People, when we say, what's the first thing you did? People will say, I cried. Someone else will say, I jumped up and down and ran around the house. Some people will say, I started to cry and I immediately hugged the person sitting next to me, although that person was on the bus and I'd never met them before. So you have this great array of things, and people get super excited. No matter who it is, no matter what it was, they find somebody else, they're super thrilled, they're super relieved, they're all these wonderful things. And that's how most of us start our college careers, with a congratulations and a great feeling. And then we go on with our summers. When our summers, we might have a job to get ready for college, to pay for some of college. We might be going on a vacation with our family. We might be spending time just sort of lazing away with our friends for that last summer. It could be a million different things. But at some point during that summer, something happens. And it happens to 99.9% of us. At some point during that summer, we realize that we're a little nervous. And all of that amazing excitement, and it could happen the day after we got our letter. It could happen 3 months later, and it goes, you're going to college soon. There's a good chance you're leaving your house, maybe your city, all the different things that you have become familiar with, your friends, your patterns, your routines. And that nervousness starts to rise. And that excitement's still there, but it becomes this really strange mixture of nerves and excitement until the very day that you leave for school. And that morning, you wake up and your eyes open, and we've all done it. We realize, oh my gosh, everything's going to change today. I'm going to college. And whether it's across town via subway here at NYU, or if it's across the country, everything is about to change. Because you are about to go to a place that's totally foreign. Now, parents, we tend to think of college, and I look at Alan because we're both parents. We tend to think about college as the 4 best years of our lives. And maybe, for many of us, they were wonderful years, but it's becoming increasingly challenging. And a look at the numbers will totally show that, demonstrate that. So a Gallup poll from 2014 showed that 90% of college students, freshmen, junior, sophomore, senior, every year, have felt overwhelming stress at some point during their year in college, every single year. Now, we put this statistic up in front of our college students, and we ask them who here's been stressed out. We have 500 students in our class, and everyone raises their hand. And we say, whoa, keep them up. Look around. And what you see in the eyes of these college students, and college students out there, you'll totally relate to this. What you see in the eyes of the college students is recognition and surprise of, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one who's super stressed out. Everyone here is stressed out. But if you look at the continuing numbers, it gets a bit more scary in a way. I mean, the same Gallup polls show that 60% of college students have felt very sad on campus during the past year. 45% of college students have felt that things were hopeless over the course of the past year. And if you really dig down, you find that that poll showed that 31.3% of college students have dealt with work-debilitating depression at some point during the past year. That was a 2014 poll. In this most recent poll from 2017, that number of 31.3% have experienced work-debilitating depression has risen to 40%. You have almost a 33% increase in only the last 3 years in depression in college. So for the parents out there, and you haven't been in school for 20 plus years, the numbers were far lower, and they are just doing this.
Right. In the last 30 years, college students are sleeping about 2 hours less. They're sleeping less than 7 hours a night on average. So it means that the average person is sleep deprived, which means there's another group that's really sleep deprived. We know that students in the last 20 years are spending more than 50% less time. They have less time to just be with other students, which is actually where a lot of us got our real pleasure from in college, those relationships. It's where we delved into our meaning and what our passions were. We know that college students are working more than ever. More than 50% of college students today have a job, right? College has become much more expensive. So we have these reports of increasing stress. We have these greater demands on them. And then the other demand, which I think we talk about all the time, and we're working on a new class for the science of happiness on, is the technology, which is that when they look at their social media account, their expectation is seeing that everybody else looks like they're having more fun. This feeling that in the past, it was, I'm going to graduate college and get a job, while today there's a feeling of, I'm going to graduate college, and by the time I graduate college, I will have had my first IPO, or I'll already have produced my first album, this expectation of the Mark Zuckerberg effect.
Right, and think about, so, when we were graduating from college 20 plus years ago, I remember having a talk with a friend who said, I'm going to be a millionaire by the time I'm 30. And I was like, oh my gosh, $1 million, that's amazing, I'll never make $1 million. But then it became 25, and now it's 22. So the pressure has ranged from that to social media and everyone having a good time. FOMO has quadrupled in the past few years.
Say what FOMO is.
Oh, fear of missing out.
Right.
So because there's always something else better going on. And on top of it all, they're not equipped to handle it for a number of reasons, including lack of sleep. So there are all these challenges to well-being. But now that we've scared you enough, what we do in our course and what we do in our book, You Thrive, How to Succeed in College and Life, is not only to address the challenges. What does depression look like? What does stress look like? What does anxiety look like? What are these issues, and how do we recognize and how do we address them as a college student and as a parent? But also, what are the opportunities? What does meaning look like? How do I find it? Why is it important? Positive emotions. Why are they important? Why are positive relationships so key and the number one predictor that you're going to thrive in college? Why does passion work? How does passion work? How do I find my passion? How about willpower? How about choice? We look at both sides, both to address the challenges and also to really make the most of the opportunities. And that, in a nutshell, is what it means to thrive. Thriving is not just being happy. It's not just positive emotion. That's not it. That's one part of it. Thriving is a complex matrix that involves positive emotion, engagement or flow, relationships, meaning, achievement, but also dealing with the challenges.
Right. So we have received a bunch of questions from people, and we're going to proceed through the questions, and you may send us more questions, and we look forward to them.
Yeah. What are some top tips that we can share with our son before he heads to school? Alan, you always have a really clear number one.
Yes,
So
there is actually an answer to this question. There is one tip, and it's interesting because Dan and I spend most of our class saying there is not one thing. So actually, I would even this is the major one. This would apply to the majority of people, that the number one predictor that a student will pass their first year, which is the year most in jeopardy. If you make it through that first year, the odds that you will graduate college go through the roof. But that number one thing in the first year is actually not how smart you are. It is not how many hours you spend in the library. It is actually a sense of belonging. It is a feeling that you belong at that institution, that you have connected to the institution, specifically socially, that you have found groups of people, or it could be a faculty. Dan, you could talk about mentorship in a second, but that idea that when you show up on campus, and we're going to talk more about this later on, when you show up on campus, it's important to find what classes you're going to be in, and try to get the best classes you're going to be in. It's probably more important in many ways to make sure that you're going to the right groups, that you're finding the activities that you can bring with you. Dan mentioned engagement, and that just popped into my head. One of the things we do in our class, engagement are activities when you become totally lost in them, when the challenge is just slightly above your skill level, when you become absorbed in the process, you love doing them. It's often sports, it's hobbies. When we ask students in our undergrad class, we say, who played a sport in high school? About maybe 80% of the hands go up, whether they were playing for a team or they played recreationally. And then we say, who is still playing that sport? And about, what do you think? 70% of the hands then go down. So when when you were going to college, and if you had some activity that you truly loved in high school, you need to find the people to do that activity with in college. That's going to be how you're going to find that group that you connect with.
If you want to boil it down, find a group, find a club, find an organization. That's it. Period. Do something you're interested in. That's all. Because then you're going to have a social group. And an instant social network is essential. So tip number one would absolutely be join a club, join a group, find a group that works for you. I would go, a tip that I also hand out would be about how college is going to work for them. A lot of students go in thinking, I need to know exactly what I'm going to do. I need to know what I'm going to major in right now, but I don't know my major. By the end of my first week of freshman year, I'm in trouble. Or I need to know what I'm passionate about. So I need to know that right now. But what college is actually a wonderful thing for is figuring that out.
Right.
I mean, there's some colleges now that have over 200 majors that are offered. NYU, we have the Gallatin School where you can make up your own major. That is a lot to navigate. So rather than coming in and saying, I know exactly what I'm going to do, I'm not going to look around at all, unless you're that rare student who knows, keep that open mind. And whatever that interest might be, take a 101 class in it. The students will come up and say, I'm really interested in French. I don't tell them to move to France. I tell them to take French 101. Because if they like it, they'll take a second French class. And if they don't, they won't. But they don't have to feel the pressure of knowing everything. This is a place to explore what might be right for you.
Right.
Yeah.
I think, as I hear you talk also, I think a lot about what you've talked about mentorship. Mm-hmm. And finding that mentor.
Right. So Richard Light, who's been at Harvard for many years, when he teaches a course specifically for freshmen, and he asks them a very simple question, which is, what is your job this semester? And after letting them go through, get good grades, make lots of friends, succeed, pick the right classes, he says, actually, your job is to find a mentor or make friends with a professor. And he says it not only because he believes it as a professor and a mentor, but because the studies show that those students who thrive after graduation, within 5 and 10 years after graduation, one of the top reasons that they say they are thriving when they talk about their time at university is they had either a professor who cared about them as a person, or a professor or a mentor who was interested in what they were interested in. So just having that kind of relationship is important. And a lot of students don't reach out. And I get it. Like, am I really supposed to talk to my professor? Am I really supposed to get close to somebody? A lot of us really look forward to being able to share that with people. And it's clearly more than just, this is what you need to write. It's more a sense of, let me give you sort of an eye on the world of what psychology might look like, what music might look like past just this semester. It gives them a broad understanding. So whether we're talking about joining groups or teams, we're talking about remaining open to possible areas of study, or we're talking about finding a mentor or professor who cares about you as a human being or is interested in what you're interested in. Those are three simple ways to go ahead into college and really launch off the right way.
Right. Your child may never have spoken to a teacher throughout all of high school. Your child, it just might not have ever interested him or her, but letting them know that actually in college, this is your chance to come in contact with people who have developed really excellence in their fields, and to touch that and to get a glimpse of it is really exciting. But it might not come naturally, and that's where you would encourage them to do it.
Yeah.
Shall we proceed?
Yes, by all means.
My son is heading off to college this fall, but he has no idea what he wants to major in. Should we wait until he knows what his focus will be before letting him start?
That's a great question. And I think we touched on it just very briefly in the last question. I go back to the idea of knowing what it is we want to major in. So let's look at the science of passion for a moment. We look at studies on passion. People tend to think, more often than not, that passions come about as thunderbolt moments, right? Jimi Hendrix walks by a window, sees a guitar, and thinks, clearly I'm going to play the guitar for the rest of my life. Or a young person is walking down the street, sees someone who's suffering and very ill. Clearly, I need to go into medicine, and then I will join Doctors Without Borders. But overwhelmingly, those thunderbolt moments do not happen. Overwhelmingly, what happens is that passions develop slowly. In fact, what the research shows, they develop over the course of about 3 years. And they start very simply, as we mentioned in the last question. What are you interested in? So we had a student a few years ago who came to us as a senior. She said, I took your course freshman year. I didn't reach out. I didn't get to know you among all those students. But I was a theater major, and I thought, I'm interested in psychology. I need a science anyway. So she came to our class. She said she really found it interesting. So she decided to take another psychology class. And then the next year, she took 2 psychology classes. And then she changed her major. And when she came to us, which is 4 years later, she said, I'm actually graduating, majoring in psych, and I'm going to grad school next year to study psych. I'm really excited about it. That's roughly the amount of time it takes to really develop something. So college, if you're not forced into a certain place, can really be a wonderful opportunity to explore those things. What are you interested in? Great. Don't feel like it has to be your profession. That's what college is here for, to explore. So does it matter whether he wants to know his major? No, not necessarily. That being said, when it comes to the second part of the question, should we wait until he knows what his focus will be before letting him start? I think there's a big difference there. One, for a lot of students, I should say for a number of students, are they ready for college right out of high school? Not necessarily.
Right. And
that's the distinguishing factor. We find that students who take a gap year because they're prepping themselves for college can often do very, very well.
Yep. When
they show up, they have gone through that transitional point, not just sitting at home necessarily, maybe either traveling or working and taking responsibility. Because when they show up to school, their habits are different. They've had more responsibility, and they're ready to be able to thrive in school. So should you wait because they don't want to know what their major is? Not necessarily. It's a great opportunity. But should you wait if they're not quite ready to go? Well, if they can do something responsibly for the following year, then that might be an idea.
I would just add to that. I'm a huge fan of the gap year. I think also developmentally, it makes a lot of sense that particularly for the men out there whose brains are about 2 years less developed as the women, that can be an opportunity to catch up a little bit. It can be a great chance to explore yourself socially, what's meaningful for you. If you can go to college with the passion to explore, I think that's a great time to go to college. But if you're going to college and you feel like I'm just doing this, there's actually quite a few studies out there that have looked at this. If you're going to college with just the reason of I'm just doing this because I'm forced to and I just want to get through college, taking a year off would make a lot of sense, and you're probably going to do a lot better when you get there, grade-wise and in terms of feeling connected to the institution.
We've been really clear that in college, work comes first, fun second. Yes, you should have a good time, but only after you have established your academic routine. Sound fair? Sounds fair.
It sounds fair.
However,
I did this. I was a pre-med student. and I was in the library on Friday and Saturday night. I would see other students going to parties through the window, and I would be like, I'll get the last laugh, which was really funny because I wasn't laughing. I was by myself. I was in the library, and they were laughing. They were having fun. And we have a lot of evidence that.
And has Alan done well, by the way? Alan has done well.
Right.
Alan went to, he did very well. He went to medical school. He's achieved a very, very high level. So you can absolutely argue that making sure that you focus on that has
it
benefits.
does. But I can truly say that I do not think I saw my real peak performance because I actually never, without the positive emotions, without the activities of engagement.
Well, here's the thing. Before we even get into engagement, I'd say the idea of fun. So this is the main question, is fun. And most people tend to think, yes, you should work first and have fun afterwards. We're not going to argue that you shouldn't work hard. But what we're finding is on studies on positive emotion, they give us an advantage when it comes to what it is that we're trying to achieve in many ways. So, for example, we talk about this, again, in our book, You Thrive. But, for example, if we look at studies of 5-year-olds, 5-year-olds who were given basic puzzles, let's just say the Legos and something to build, designed to copy and build. One group of 5-year-olds was not prompted at all, just said, here are the Legos, please go ahead and start to build. Another group was asked to think of, very simply, the happiest memory they possibly can for the next 30 seconds. That's what they do, and it turns out that they are far more collaborative. Those who are primed with positive emotions are more collaborative. They're more engaged. They tend to do things more accurately, and they tend to do things more quickly. So it seems from those kind of studies that priming with positive emotion or having fun is really beneficial. Now, if your kids aren't 5, or if you're a student and you're not 5, we also look at studies of medical students. We find very similar kind of ideas. When given symptoms to diagnose, one group not primed at all, another group primed with positive emotions, they were given a bag of candy. Those medical students, not medical students, those doctors with at least 3 years of experience, they diagnose those symptoms 19 to 20% more accurately than their non-primed peers. So something's going on. And when we back up to look at college students, we find that college students who have been primed with positive emotions, again, very simply, think of the happiest memory you can for the next 45 seconds, do better on tests of memorizing words. They memorize up to 70% more words in a foreign language than non-primed peers, do better on tests of creativity. They do better on standardized testing. They answer more questions. They answer more questions correctly. So the idea that we should work first and then have fun, there's a lot to be said for that. But we're finding really in the research is that when we can experience positive emotions, we have an advantage when it comes to performing better in many, many tasks. So is it a mix? It's absolutely a mix. But no fun doesn't necessarily make us succeed. It's having fun first that allows us to take that advantage.
Right. And remember, if it is all about work first, and if that is the only focus and you get away from the belonging, that you're getting away from the thing that's really going to predict you surviving your first year and thriving in your first year of college. If you've gotten into that college, I mean, I think almost all of us show up at college, or many of us, I can't say all of us, but many of us show up at college with that question of, can I do it here? You know, will I pass? Yeah. You've gotten into the school. You can pass. There is no question about that when the students arrive. You've made it into the school. The real problem comes when people are disconnected from the campus.
Because they think they're the only ones who are failing.
That's right.
They think the only ones who are getting B's or getting C's or stressed out. And what's so important is the ability to turn to someone next to them. One of the reasons we ask that question.
And to tend and befriend.
And be able to say, oh, wait, you're kind of struggling in this class too?
Yeah.
That's good. And that's why we ask the question at the beginning of the semester, who are stressed out? When every hand goes up, they're like, I'm not the only one. And this is what happens too, to say, I'm not the only one who's stressed out. I'm not the only one who's anxious. I'm not the only one who's struggling a little bit. I'm not the only one who might fail my first test. There are other people around. I'm actually in pretty good company. And if we only focus on the work, we never make the friendships that allow us to do that. And, by the way, when we do succeed and things do go well, having somebody else there to share it with amplifies that experience. In fact, there's a technique called ACR, active constructive responding, which has been thoroughly researched. And we find that when we share good news with others, when they are able to respond in a way that encourages us to think about things even more so. Something good happened with Alan. Tell me more about that. How'd that happen for you? Like, they get a chance to relive it. And often with ACR, not only does it create greater bonds, but also it allows that person to enjoy getting an A on the test, getting into college even more than the initial moment.
Right.
And by the way, I'll just finish this question by saying this, that ACR, or the ability to sort of to look someone in the eye, smile, and tease out more wonderful things about good news, is not just a college student thing. Parents, those of you who are looking to enrich the bond you have, even though your babies are flying the coop, right? They're flying the nest. You can ACR them too. Tell us more about how that went well. We'd love to hear about it. And so often for parents, it's about what went wrong. This is a great opportunity to say, what went right? And let's talk about that because it enhances the experience. This is yours.
Our daughter is already on the pre-med track. We've made sure that she got a head start in her required courses and have steered her to sign up for all the appropriate courses. Any advice? This is something we come to a lot, which is we have many students who feel that they are following a path, whether it's law, medicine, business, and they're doing it not because it is coming from them. They don't feel like they chose it on their own, autonomously. They feel that they are being pushed to do this. When you're being pushed to do something, when you're doing something for someone else, you will start really well. If Dan and I are both studying for a calculus exam, but I didn't want to do it and he did, we're both going to start off working just as hard. But when things get really hard, Dan, who really wanted to do it, he's going to forge ahead. I am going to really struggle with that. It is going to become drudgery. This is where people become pretty miserable. So we spend a lot of time helping students have conversations with their parents often, talking about how they aren't sure that this is what they want to do.
Well, first and foremost, I'd say, the question is, why do you want to do this?
Yeah.
Right? And if the answer is, and we go back to the studies on passion, if the answer is, I love medicine, great. If the answer is because your doctors, or because you want me to do it, or because it'll provide me an income that will give me a certain lifestyle. If it's about status, I'm a doctor. If it's about money, if it's about other people, doing it for other people, then we start to see what we call obsessive passion. And that's a real downward spiral. It's a huge rate of burnout. But if the answer is, because this question is, we've made sure that she got a head start and we have steered her to sign up. Well, then the question for me comes up as to what would she like to do?
Yeah.
And wonderful thing, going back to the idea of college, is this is a great chance to say, you know what, I'm going to explore some other things because medicine is kind of interesting, but I don't know if I want to spend the rest of my life in it. I'm going to take some other classes just to see how I'm doing. I'd say let her breathe a bit.
Yeah.
We have twins who are sophomores in high school. How can we help them choose the right colleges? Ooh, that's a great question. First of all, my condolences. That's a lot of that's a lot of tuition, but bravo, congratulations to you all. So here's the interesting thing about colleges. Well, and let's just really talk about choice. We do a whole class on choice, the chapter in the book on choice. Choice is a wonderful thing, and people tend to think that the more choice we have, the happier we are. The more choice we have, the better it is. The more freedom we have, the more choice we have. But there's a tipping point. And the way that we very simply describe it is via headphones. For the parents out there, do you remember when Walkman came out? When Walkman came out, you had two basic choices. You had one headphone. You had this black set of headphones, and it sounded terrible, and it hurt, right? And you were like, oh, but I'm walking down the street, and there's music at the same time. I'm not carrying a stereo. This is amazing. And that's wonderful. And then it came out a second pair of headphones. They were silver. And you were like, wow, silver headphones. Cool, I kind of want those.
Yeah.
Now, here's the deal. If you only had one versus the other, okay, you could deal with not having the black or not having the silver. But today, there are thousands of kinds of headphones. And the opportunity cost of choosing one, say the silver Beats instead of the blue, black, green, red, yellow, Lakers, Celtics, Yankees, Red Sox Beats, it's a much bigger opportunity cost. You think about what you don't have. The same thing happens when it comes to colleges, which is that there was a time when people would go to the state university or they go locally. That was it. They had a choice of one or two schools, right? But now a lot of people are looking at every school in the country. And thanks to the Common App, they're applying to almost every school in the country. I read recently that I think that college students will apply on average to 18 schools. What that means is that the 17 they don't go to, they are going to wish they had gone to when one thing goes wrong at the first one. So what we try to recommend is that they build a really simple matrix of what's important to them. And so your two sophomores might see things the same way. We both want to go to a big school. We both want to go to a school that has a big sports program so we can root on Saturdays. We both want to go to a school where there's lots of Greek life. We both want to go to a school, so on and so forth. But if you know that you want to go to that big school, great, put that on your matrix and eliminate all the small schools out there because you just cut about 90% of the possibilities, which is daunting but wonderful. If you know you want to go to a school where teachers teach the classes instead of TAs, put that on your list because guess what? You've just knocked out a bunch of schools. So if you pick out like 5 or 6 key elements for you, location, how far do I want to be from home? Maybe they want to be within an hour of you.
Right.
Maybe they want to be beyond 8 hours of you. But the point is, put it down there so at least you know, oh, you want to be within 3 hours driving distance? That eliminates everything outside of this. Wonderful. You've just started to cull it down, and you know that you've selected those things that are important to you. Distance, location,
right,
size, strength of faculty, strength of a certain department maybe a sports program, maybe clubs in chess or radio or journalism that are important to you. And you get those down, you can eliminate 95% of the schools and then really focus on the ones that are right for you.
Actually, you just popped such a memory. This young woman I went to high school with, her only deciding factor for college was she wanted to ski. That was it.
Yeah.
And so she went. She had an amazing time. She went to University of Colorado, and she was skiing all the time. And she had a wonderful time because she had that high level of engagement. It became very simple. When you can do something like that, when you can narrow it down, you're guaranteeing yourself, in a way, a much more simple process and potentially a really rich time in college.
And I just add one more thing, which is this. A lot of folks are intent on going to super prestigious schools. I must go to this school, right? And we won't name them. We'll just say that they rhyme with Schmarbert and Male, for example, right? So they must go there. Well, why must they go there? Is there a certain professor they want to study with? Is there a certain department they want to work with? Or is it for the name? Because we find often that it's not the students that thrive who go to the best schools. It's the best fit for them.
Right.
So if they're looking at a school like those two schools or other prestigious schools because there's something specific about them, wonderful. But if they're not, you might be setting yourself up to fail. You might do much, much better at a school where you can do something like ski or do something like play a sport because it's Division III instead of Division I or whatever that might be.
And almost all of the evidence is against that. That if you're going to a school based solely on name, but it is not a place you're going to thrive in, if it is much better to be a very successful student at a less known school than to be a mediocre or less than mediocre student at a much better school. People do look at your CV. Our son doesn't want to speak with us very much. We just want to be good parents in the process, not overbearing or putting on too much pressure. How can we achieve that balance? I'm going to use this. I think we're almost out of time. We're going to keep going for a little bit.
Alan wasn't actually talking to anybody.
I wasn't.
He just asked this question out loud.
There's someone else in this room. The wonderful Lily. Is this the first time someone's mentioned you on a webinar?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent.
Lily's amazing.
Lily's amazing. Yeah. Lily does everything here. Maybe I'll wrap things up and we could go for some other questions. Does that make sense?
Sure.
You cool.
I think there's an easy way to wrap this up. And it relates to how Dan started this conversation, which is he talked about how we all have a shared experience when it comes to college, but things have also changed. There are much greater pressures in many ways. It is more complex to be a college student today than it was 20 years ago. Something in survey after survey, what has remained totally constant, and there are other things that have remained constant, but what has remained totally constant is when undergraduates are asked what their number one resources in life, it is their parents. That's it. So your kid may not, for very healthy, developmentally appropriate reasons, want to speak to you that often. It might be once a month. It might be once a semester. So you may be able to set some limit. You may be able to say, I got to talk to you once a month, or it could be once a week. Once a day is probably pushing it.
I told my 10-year-old that I'm going to school with him, college with him.
So
he keeps insisting I'm not, but I insist that I am.
And just to be like full transparency, my wife is insisting that our kids go to NYU because we basically live on the campus, and that they will live with us in our room. So that's where we're at. But in reality, the idea is that you letting your kid know, you letting your child know that you are there for them, no matter what. No questions, no issues. You are there for them whenever they want to talk. Dan mentioned ACR before, active constructive responding. When you call up, the first questions you should be asking about should be about belonging. It should be, what groups have you found that you find interesting? Oh, really? What do you like about them? That's wonderful. Friendships, activities. Really, if you want to ask about the work, I wouldn't say, how's the work going? I would just say, how would you say it in a really kind way?
Maybe what are you most excited about in class?
Yeah, I would just leave it at that. You're going to find out what their grades are. That will become apparent eventually. But if you start off and you're just asking them about their grades, they will feel that that's all you're really interested in. And you could have that conversation. Be like, look, I want to be there to help support you in your work because I think there is a lot of work in college and it was really hard for me. What's the best way for me to support you in college to help you get your work done? That's a kind way of saying it. But if you start off and it's always, how's the work? Are you in the library? Are you working hard? Why aren't you in the library? They're just not going to want to talk about that. That's not that's not a conversation that makes people feel good. So remember, even if they don't want to talk to you that often, you are their number one support. Don't blame them. Don't hold it against them. Try not to give them too much guilt. Just focus on that. So perhaps should we go to some questions that people have sent in?
Oh, fancy. Let's see. My son doesn't eat unless starving. Sandwich making takes more executive function than he has. How can he stay healthy in college?
Wow. It's a really good one. Whenever I start talking about food in college, it's hard not to talk about the freshman 15, which actually doesn't exist at all in any way. Kids, young adults, when they go off to college, about 30% of them lose weight because their diets change. The average weight gain is about 3.8 pounds. The majority of the weight gain has nothing to do with what they eat. It has to do with what they drink. It's about alcohol consumption. And there's another percent of kids that just stay the same.
Here's the thing. I mean, the question here is, he's not going to eat unless starving, right? So, people end up eating.
Yeah.
They end up eating something. It's tough to keep them on that. It's actually interesting when you look at studies of students who do well in college. Those students who eat something,
for breakfast,
anything, like Pop-Tarts, couch pizza, you name it, before a test, are far more likely to do well in that test. So it's a little less
breakfast.
For breakfast. So it's a little less about what it is they're eating. That's the first question: is are they eating anything? Can they get their hands on anything? That's the first thing. Yeah.
So if you want to plug anything, you could point out that in studies of over 1,000 students, you say, look, you're going to eat what you want to eat. But if you can eat something for breakfast, it seems to have a real benefit for how people function for the whole day. It kind of tells the body that the body is not going to starve. People who eat breakfast tend to eat more calories in the day than other people, but weigh less. Fascinating little tip there, because they usually end up eating slightly healthier food. And people who skip breakfast end up becoming too hungry and then eat the first food they can grab. That's a theory there. But I think I would go to motivational interviewing here, which is this is a son, my son. So look, son, when you don't eat, I worry that you don't perform at your best. That's why I want you to eat. because I want to see you having the willpower to get the work done. What's it going to take? What would you need?
You know what? I'd recommend, honestly, I just send them a box of like reasonably healthy bars. So they're there, because you know what? If your kid's not gonna make a sandwich, let them grab a bar out of the closet and know, oh, at least it's here. Then it's there. Send them a gift bag of those kind of things on a regular basis, and it's a great step. It makes it easier for them.
And text them 3 times a day. Did you eat? Did you eat? What's another question?
Question number 2. How do I best assist my introverted son to make friends without him falling prey to the numerous distractions of college life?
Ooh, that's 2. That's really 2 questions.
It is.
That's an easy one, Dan. You take it.
Thanks.
Sure.
That's the sign for it's not an easy one. So here's the thing. I think there are a couple of things that bring up the introversion thing. So the introversion thing can be interesting, and that really depends on how you perceive what friend making is and what a social group is. If you as a parent are an extrovert, there's a good chance you're going to think, why doesn't my son have a whole crew of people, or my son have a whole crew of people to hang out with all the time? If he's spending time by himself, is that bad? If you're an introverted parent, you're going to understand that's not bad. That when we look at studies of extroverts and introverts, they both have friends. The big difference is that introverts, while they might have fewer friends, they tend to have those friends that are fewer but closer than the other ones. They also need more time by themselves. So it's not that they have no friends. It's often they're just spending the right amount of time with the friends they have. And respecting something like that is a really important thing. You actually might enjoy the book Quiet by Susan Cain, which is research-packed and is all about introversion and how healthy they can be. So sometimes it's simply understanding how an introvert thrives. We do teach a whole class on extroversion and introversion, and towards the end of the class, we give them the opportunity for the extroverts to ask introverted questions and for the introverts to ask the extroverts some questions. And without fail, the extroverts are like, how do you stay so quiet all the time? Aren't you lonely? And the introverts are like, no, I'm just watching you talk all the time and thinking about how fascinating it is. So, how you decide what a healthy social circle is, it can be big, it can be small. As long as there are some friends, you're fine. As to the second part of the question, falling prey to the numerous distractions of college life, they're going to fall prey.
Right. That is one of the transition challenges.
Right.
You have this tremendous flood of autonomy with a million, 200 majors, 200 activities, and learning how to self-regulate. So if your child has a lot of challenges with that, to begin with, helping them set some kind of rules ahead of time. I'm also, that idea of saying, you can be in, well, no, that's just
let's stick to this question. I just say, if the question is about how does an introvert make friends without falling prey to distractions, I actually wouldn't worry about it. No. The odds of an introvert falling prey to distractions are pretty slim. The odds of an extrovert falling prey to distractions are greater because there's so much stuff that they want to do.
Let's talk about your experience in college.
I love college.
But you must have had like a million interests.
Yeah, I played in the orchestra. I played chamber music. I wrote for the paper. I had a radio show. I played soccer. I had amazing friends. I was in a fraternity. Like, I had all these wonderful things, and they made my life really, really rich.
But you somehow graduated.
I didn't graduate. My first year grade-wise was a struggle. But as it came together, I realized, there's a way to do all of this, including like study groups and being able to surround myself with things that enriched my experience. So, it takes a second for anybody, introverts or extroverts. The lowest GPA will almost always be the freshman year GPA. So you got to give them a chance to sort of integrate into that process.
Yeah.
Question number 3. My friends and I recently graduated and feel like we're drowning in a sea of uncertainty and self-doubt. Any advice how we can build identity capital and utilize this opportune time productively? Alan?
Wow. That's a great question.
It is a great question.
I think that is a feeling that many people who graduate, because you go from an environment which you have this autonomy, but there are some built-in structures. You have a gym. You're given this free access to a gym. And if you're interested in music, you have recording studios. You have a million opportunities, and they are gifted to you in many ways. And then when you leave, there is there is a lot of opportune time, but it takes much more effort to go out there and capitalize on it. But I would say, the current generation moves more often, lives in more places, has more partners, and also has more jobs than any other generation before it. Will move 7 times on average in their 20s. And what the current generation has to get really good at is wherever they go to, almost like setting up your tent. If you've ever gone camping, the first thing you do is you find out where your water is, and you find out where the bathroom is, and you set up your tent. But I'm often describing to new graduates this need to kind of find their base. Just as when you showed up at college, we said find an activity. Wherever you are, making sure you still have the meaningful activities that are a part of your life, that you're not leaving behind your passion for soccer, that you're not, the exploring doesn't stop outside of college. It just becomes in some ways more challenging. And I would say you have to be a little bit more focused. I
would add that sometimes it's not about what it is you're doing, it's about how you're doing it. And so what we find often is that use of character strengths is a really, really wonderful opportunity. When I say character strengths, again, you're welcome to check it out in our book, You Thrive. But we have directions both to an assessment and also just a list of the 24 character strengths. The character strengths are those things that when we use them, we often feel like we're stronger. We feel like it's authentic, like it's the real us. They include things like bravery, appreciation of beauty, mastery. They include things like zest, social intelligence, humility, love and capacity to be loved, gratitude, kindness. And when those things, regardless of the job you're doing, regardless of whatever you're doing, when you're able to experience your strengths on a regular basis, asking yourself that question, if kindness is one of your strengths, how am I going to show kindness today in a new way? If appreciation of beauty and mastery is one of your strengths, what am I going to do today that's going to allow me to really live in that strength? Is it go to a museum? Is it to look at a coworker and think, what do they do really, really well? If it's bravery, what are the tough choices you can make on a daily basis? When we use those character strengths regularly, we tend to feel stronger. Yeah. When we use those character strengths regularly, the research shows that we tend to achieve goals at almost twice the clip. We use those character strengths regularly, our level of self-efficacy, of self-belief, of all these different things come into play. So the question of uncertainty and self-doubt is such a valid and challenging but important question. Often it's about finding something, anything that you're good at. And it's not necessarily a skill. Sometimes it's more of something you value that you can use on a regular basis, and that is a strength of character. So I'd encourage you to look up character strengths. There's something called the VIA, V-I-A, Values in Action Assessment. You can get that done for free and see how you can weave those into your life. That might be a really wonderful way to explore how to use them, because they'll apply to your job right now. Mm-hmm. They'll apply to your job in 5 years. They'll apply to your job in 20 years. That could be a good thing to do.
So we have time for one more question. Two more questions. Okay. 2 more questions.
So question number 4, are there additional strategies you suggest for students from first generation or underrepresented backgrounds? If I take first crack at this.
After you.
So I'll go first. And look, one of the very top, and there's some wonderful research going on around this. Some top research going on down at the University of Texas, Austin, and other places as well. One of the top factors for first generation college students is that they have a role model in college who they can relate to. And those role models are often, if not always, but optimally other students who can relate to the situation. Let's say you're a first-generation college student from a certain immigrant community. If you can find another first-gen student, if you're a freshman, find a sophomore or junior, or even a senior, but optimally someone else who's still there, who's also from a very similar community to yours, who said, I can relate. I know what your challenges are because I've been there, and this is how I succeeded. That's the greatest predictor, I believe, and that I'm aware of in the research, that you will then succeed. By having a role model. And it's not necessarily someone who said, well, now that I'm 60, back when I was your age in first gen, well, that's wonderful to have too. It's someone who's right there, who's in the moment, who succeeded, who understands your background, who's been a part of your background, who you can relate to, who can serve as a mentor for you. That's enormously important.
Right. Knowing that it is supposed to be hard that first year. hearing from someone else within your community that this is hard, being able to not feel lonely. Loneliness, when people become depressed, they feel lonely. When people are really lonely, they become depressed. And I think a lot of undergraduates, particularly first-generation students, underrepresented students, when they're not doing well, they think that all of the predictions have come true. They knew this was going to happen. I was never meant to go to school. I'm not smart enough. But then they find out that actually everybody doesn't feel smart enough when they show up. And when that feeling can be normalized, it's not as scary. You say, oh, this is what's supposed to happen. And a study done by the University of Waterloo and the University of Stanford with women going into the STEM field, science, technology, engineering, and math, just having a group of women who are going into the STEM fields meet together once a month and just share their experiences, their feelings of microaggression from other students, that response that they would get from teachers of, oh, isn't this nice? A woman's going into this. Just being able to meet with other women and feel that they weren't alone in this experience caused a significant improvement actually in their grades. So it means a lot to have the peers who tell you that it's going to be okay, that it's going to be really hard, but you're going to get through it, that you're going to make mistakes, and that's a part of it.
And show you specifically how they've navigated that path.
I think one of the hardest, besides those, one of the hardest things for any student to experience, if a student has done very, very well before college, let's say they're basically perfect. I went to a graduation ceremony recently, and there was a student who had an average of 100.4. So she was basically perfect. And when I looked at her, I thought, when you get to college and you get your first grade back, and it's a 80, which
or 99,
or 99, how are you going to handle that?
Well, there's a wonderful story from a colleague who worked at Harvard for a long time, and he looked at all the students when he was an RA on the floor, and he said, so 50% of you are going to be in the bottom 50% of your class this semester. And everyone was like, I've never been in anything with the top 1%. How do you deal with that? First gen, it's, finding some sort of guidepost is someone who understands.
Yeah.
Last question. How to succeed in college while suffering from ADHD?
So that's a great question. We've talked about your autonomy is increasing, your choices are increasing, the level of distraction is being multiplied by distraction infinity.
And all of the structure that you had found to succeed at home, your
right.
parents, your friends, your routines, gone.
You are going to have to recreate some of that. You're going to have to make a decision that you're going to continue your medication, and medication is still one of the most effective ways of treating ADHD that we know. You're going to have to, you might be showing up at school. Your parents may have, helped you take your medication every day. You're going to have a way of doing that. Having a pill case, having reminders on your phone. I use reminders on my phone constantly. The reason we were on time here today is because a reminder goes off.
I would not have been on time.
He definitely would not have been on time, but it's like my alarm says it's time to go. There's a lot of evidence for the scheduling. You also have to remember, about a third of kids with ADHD grow out of the ADHD. You are improving. You have made it here. You belong here. Just like the first-gen students that we were talking about, underrepresented groups, it will be hard knowing that in advance and that it can get better. There are also resources, which I want to go to. At NYU, we have a college transition workshop. This is designed for teens who have ADHD and issues with getting and staying organized. You can learn how to become more organized. You might be really organized. You can still benefit from this. It teaches practical skills for managing time, studying effectively, avoiding pitfalls such as procrastination, poor sleep hygiene. I think the really hard part is, for all the patients I work with, is sometimes being told that things are going to have to be a little different for you in college, that you might not be able to party as much as Dan did.
No one could party as much.
No one could. Few of us could. I really didn't, and that was a huge mistake. But that you're going to have to be a little more careful about your sleep hygiene. That if all of your friends, they stay out all night, you might do a lot better if you come home at 2 a.m. But you can still have a lot of fun until 2 a.m.
You know, and maybe even add something like, and you feel free to push back on this, but look, the odds of them coming back at 2 a.m. as someone who did not come back at 2 a.m., even though I dealt with ADHD issues, are slim. I'm going to stay out. This is awesome. This is fun. I'm not going home. Like, there's no way it's going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. You college students out there who are laughing right now, and they're like, not going to happen. I hear you. It's not going to happen. However, if you know you're that kind of person who are not going to come home at 2 a.m., don't take the 8 a.m. class.
Oh, right, yeah.
You know, schedule your work. So, you know, if you can get, I know as someone who deals with this issue, like, if I don't get 7 hours, my mind's all over the place. When I get 7 hours, I'm good. So scheduling yourself to know that I don't take the early class, not because I'm lazy, but because my brain doesn't function as well if I do. Because I'm in college, I know I'm going to go out. I'm going to start my classes a little bit later. That will help you set up for success. And it won't make you, force you into a place where you're like, well, clearly I got to just suck it up and not sleep. You're just not going to work this way.
Right.
Yeah.
Setting yourself up, that's such a great point.
As Alan said, something like, you know, scheduling things on your phones. I have things exactly the same way. Alan does it for many reasons. I do it because I deal with this too. So I have, you know, when to take meds. I have, you know, when I should go to sleep, actually. I have all those kind of things, and I track my sleep. So it's really like, oh, it pops up. I need to take this now. Oh, it pops up. That's right. It's time for me to do X. And so I've routinized my day. And one of the great things, there are not a whole lot of wonderful things about technology, but one of the things that can be wonderful is this, to make it pop up for you, and you're like, that's right, and that can be great.
That is one component of the cell phone that has been amazing. It is like carrying around a personal assistant. If you make it so, you will have to become the best version of yourself. I would highly recommend Richard Gallagher's course, Richard.Gallagher at nyumc.org. You can contact him. This was such a pleasure. It's always a pleasure sitting here with Dan.
I love sitting here with Alan. Hey, Lily, over there.
Do people usually sing goodbye to everyone?
I'm not singing.
Well, tell them about your next webinar.
Ooh. Oh, sing it. Sing about your next webinar.
In olden days, a thing forgotten word. The next webinar is on July 24th. It is the science of positive relationships. I will talk all about relationships.
With a little help from my friends. I get little help from my friends. There it is. I need to do it.
Goodbye. Good. Does anybody do this?
No.
Seriously
This is the first. We're the first. Thank you. I hope this was useful.
Thank you for being here today. We hope it helped, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.
Take care.
Thank you.
The end. What do we do now?